Alrighty, we have a game from a recent stream. BBB's Strat game versus Blood Penguin / Plague Penguin, however you know him. We have Skaven versus Norsca. It's been a matchup that's actually cropping up a decent amount. Norsca is kind of back into the zeitgeist as to things to counterpick into Skaven. Though a lot of Norsca players have different ways of playing it, and a lot of Skaven have different ways of playing it. Strat game is a very different way of playing it. We have Throt the Unclean on foot, with Creature Killer, his plus 16 bonus versus large temporary aura, and his Rat Ogre summon. Then we have a Warlock Engineer with his Mortis Engine type ability from his Warpstone armor, and then Cleansing Ruin, very strong Final Transmutation type spell. 2 Warp Grinders, both of them have a net ability for anything on the ground, and then they have an AoE damage ability also for anything on the ground. 3 Skaven Slave Slingers, and then a backline of Clan Rats with Spears, 3 Plague Monks Censer Bearers, one of which is Blightscap's Plague Pack, and then a bunch of Stormvermin Halberds, one of which is the Council Guard. For the side of Norsca, we have the Cold Voider Frostworm ROR, 2 Armored Skin Wolves, Marauder Berserkers, and Marauders across the front line. And then we have Throg the Troll King with just Fight or Die. We have a Shaman Sorcerer Fire with just Burning Head, the Soul Crusher War Mammoth ROR, and the Beast of Tashnar Norscan Warhounds ROR. Skaven are going to be very susceptible to breath attacks and Burning Head in this game. All of their elite infantry are rather weak to those things. Even the Stormvermin with 90 armor, it's not the most armor in the game. Still, Overcast Burning Head could do some pretty good damage there. Cold Voider's going to open up with a breath attack onto the Blightscap's Plague Pack, taking it down to about half HP, which is pretty brutal. Just a little bit of Skaven Slave Slinger Fire in response to that. Ooh, follow-up Burning Head does try and catch them, but it looks like Strat King is on top of it enough just to dodge that, and then it tickles some Skaven Slave Slingers, but overall they'll be fine. Plague Monk Censer Bearers running away from the Marauder Berserkers. They do run into the Burning Head, but they drag the Berserkers into it too, so everybody taking a bit of damage from that. And now the Censer Bearers plus Spears are going to fight Armored Skin Wolves and Berserkers. That is definitely a good fight for the Skaven, though, as the Spears plus the magic damage really deals with the Skin Wolves nicely, and the Skin Wolves are just going to opt out of that as quickly as possible. Slings are trying to punish them as they run away, but meanwhile the front line has been locked in earnest. Marauders get onto the Warp Grinders, which could be pretty huge. And in the distance, Rat Ogre summon from Throt the Unclean with no Creature Killer popped yet, but they did do a lot of damage. The Soul Crusher is just going to opt out of there. He's going to run away. There's Creature Killer. So it was on the infantry. It was before the summon came out, apparently. First of the Warp Grinders is hitting. It's hurting 2 Marauders pretty bad. Quick breath attack from the Cold Voider, maybe? Yeah, onto those Stormvermin Halberds. Throg blocking a little bit of it there, and some of it hit the grass, but still does decent damage. And the War Mammoth is out while the Rat Ogre summon wears down. Bounce power is pretty heavily in Norsca's favor already. I mean, considering how early in the game it is. And a Burning Head is going to rip through some Censer Bearers, some Warp Grinders, and in the distance, some Clan Rat Spears. Really good Burning Head there. Also, the Warlock Engineer is routed by Throg. That's something we didn't see happening. But yeah, so the Skaven caster is already potentially out of the game. Skaven are in mass exodus for now, though they do have one of their Warp Quakes hitting the Beast of Tashnar, hitting these Marauder Berserkers, and keeping them in place. Soul Crusher is back in the fight. Throt is like, hey, come back here and fight me, you stupid bastard. But Soul Crusher's not really that kind of guy. Seismic Stare still going. Soul Crusher can't move. He walked into it, so it started affecting him as well. Warlock Engineer does get away from Throg. Throg turns around instead to fight the Plague Monk Censer Bearers. Looks like the Shaman Sorcerer Fire is going to try and pick up the mantle on that one. So Mammoth's still rampaging around here. Cold Voider also chilling in the fight, though he usually doesn't want to stay on the ground. There's no real healing for him. Quick Burning Head onto these Plague Monk Censer Bearers. Just trying to hit them. Doesn't want to go back into the blob at all because he'll hit mostly his own guys, I think is the thinking. But I still would have preferred to be like down the pike here and maybe sacrifice this Marauder. I don't know. Shaman Sorcerer Fire is trying to chase the Warlock Engineer, but the Warlock Engineer is significantly faster because he has the Skaven passive where if your leadership is low, you get a bunch of speed. So Warlock Engineer is fine. Warp Grinders, Plague Monk Censer Bearers are getting a bit of a second wind. They're coming back. Throt is currently fighting the Soul Crusher, giving all of his Spears and Halberds a little bit of a boon. Fight or Die is popped from Throg, though, and his Marauders are going absolutely nuts, but the Censer Bearers have another added thing, is they're contaminated. -10 leadership on anybody they touch. Can be really annoying for low leadership factions like Norsca. Now the breath attack for the Cold Voider, that is all 3, and they've all 3 hit elite targets, so pretty good stuff over there. Meanwhile, Marauder Berserkers, they're trying to push down the Council Guard, and they honestly can. Berserkers will eat into the Council Guard with 42 melee defense versus 53 melee attack plus bonus versus infantry. Marauder Berserkers will do great there. Another Warp Quake, draining down the morale of the Norskins and the Skinwolf. The armored Skinwolves come back, but they immediately are going to be routed by the Contaminated from Blightscap's Plague Pack. Now in the distance, Warlock Engineer does try to come back. He is attacked by the Shaman Sorcerer, but he's gonna walk past him. Takes a little bit of damage. Now he's just gonna outrun that boy back to the main fight. And Throg is even routing near full HP. Cold Voider is trying to get up in the sky. The Soul Crusher Mammoth is also having a hard time. These Marauder Berserkers are fighting at the very last as a rear charge from armored Skinwolves will rout off these Clan Rats with spears. But will it be enough? Bap! To save these Berserkers? Looks like maybe. Wow, the Skinwolves even plow forward in the Council Guard. They're not going to love that as much, but the Council Guard do eventually have to die. Throg and the Cold Voider turn around and fight one more time, routing off these Sensor Bearers, but with Halberds and Throt coming nearby, they might want to opt out. The Warlock Engineer is returning, and he hasn't cast any Flensing Runes yet. No, not with that much value. So he could throw an overcasted Flensing Rune down any second and do a lot of damage to a single entity. Slingers trying to punish the Skinwolves, maybe the Berserkers, but they do a little bit of friendly fire as well. Another Seismic Snare nets Throg, and an overcasted Flensing Ruin is coming out to punish him, but the overcast damage plus a Skinwolf attack plus the Cold Voider landing on top of him means he's actually going to rout again. That is very unlucky that he got that the overcast actually did damage to him. Rest in peace. Throg got two big hits onto Throt the Unclean, and now a Burning Head is going to try and clear out the Skaven around him. There is no friendly fire to be found, so overall it is just fine. It is swimming, and it is gosh darn dandy to hit all of those units with that ability. Plaguemon Sensor Bearers get a free charge on the Marauders, who are currently locked down. It looked like they were in a net from the Warp Grinders, maybe. Frostworm tries to land on Throt, and as soon as he does that, he gets Seismic Snared. He can't move, and Throt is going to try and fight back. Meanwhile, the Berserkers are still fighting those Council Guard that we mentioned earlier, and the Berserkers will probably win it. Shaman Sorcerer of Fire is locked down to a bunch of Halberds. Balance of Power is still heavily in Norsca's favor, though I am getting very concerned, especially as the Cold Voider gets stuck in melee combat. He has decent melee stats, but he's not the best at fighting, like Throg. Also, Blightscap's Plague Pack give everybody ITP and an aura around them, so that could be really brutal to overcome. Armored Skinwolves charging in to help Throg. They immediately rout. Want nothing to do with this fight. The Cold Voider gets beset yet again. And he gets netted yet again from these Warp Grinders, who definitely have to be taken out. But another Burning Head is going to go down the line. Trying to do a little bit more tickle damage. The Cold Voider is routing, and now all of a sudden Skaven are ahead on the balance of power. Throg is running out to stop these Slingers from shooting, but also just to buy himself a little bit more time to regen up. The Warlock Engineer is back. Oof. The Warlock Engineer is back. He could cast another Flensing Ruin. Routing Clan Rats are making these Storm Vermin consider routing as well, though. Skinwolves, Berserkers, the Soul Crusher are returning. There's not a lot of regen left for Norsca. They have one Skinwolf and Throg healing back up. Meanwhile, Throt is healing for the Skaven. That's about it. We still have two of these Warp Grinders. And Skinwolves lurking. Cold Fighter's back. Throt is still here. I was going to say Throg is coming back, but then I got distracted. Soul Crusher dives in. Soul Crusher immediately Seismic Snared, and the Cold Voider is also going to dive in, miss its charge attack, and get Seismic Snared, so now it can't get close to that Warlock Engineer, and this is two big monsters of Norsca, two very important pieces of the puzzle locked in place, and a Flensing Ruin is cast. Flensing Ruin overcasts yet again, hurting the poor little Warlock Engineer, shattering him off the map. Very unfortunate RNG there, because it doesn't hurt you every single time. Now that the net has worn off, the Flensing Ruin is stuck in place. It was not attached to either of these guys, so they both could just walk out of it. It still did decent damage, but they did manage to just walk out. Throg is now fighting with Blightscap's Plague Pack and the Council Guard and Storm Vermin Halberds. And he gets Seismic Snared. He can't move yet again. Also, this Soul Crusher walks back into the Flensing Ruin, and he is Seismic Snared from that guy over there. So a combo here, a little bit of an unfortunate misplay, and he ends up taking a bunch of damage from that Seismic Snare, from the Flensing Ruin, and he routs yet again. Throg and the Cold Voider are teaming up on Throt. They've done a lot of damage to him. They're getting him awful close to routing, but again, that ITP from these Blightscap's Plague Packs is a huge deal. Another Warp Grinder, attack. This one's a Warp Quake, so it just does damage. Skinwolves are routed. Blightscap's Plague Pack are routed, and that is huge. Blightscap's Plague Pack, once they get out of range, once they no longer have that Rabble Rouse, I think you're going to see a big break here from the Skaven, because Throt's only hanging on to leadership from the fact that he can't Terror out right now. It's going to be comboed with a Burning Head, so the Burning Head lowers all their leadership with Burnt, and they lose their ITP. You see two Warp Grinders immediate Terror out. Throt also Terror outs all of a sudden, and Army Losses is looking danger close for the Skaven. The Cold Voider is also routing. But we have a Shaman Sorcerer. We have Throg. They should be okay. Maybe the Soul Crusher will come back. Blightscap's Plague Pack are back, however. And with their aura... Oh, no, they rout again. I was going to say they could rally the Warp Grinders, but instead the Warp Grinders routed them. Council Guards continue to fight as last the Warp Grinders are going to break. And the Council Guard down to 3 models, 83 hit points is not going to be enough. Army Losses even hits. And that is a win for Norsca in a very close game. For strat game, Throt, 1,000 value, did okay. 900 on the Warlock Engineer. Council Guard got 1,100. Plaguemas Censer Bearers, 900, 500, 700. 1,300 and 1,600 on the other Stormvermin Halberds. Both the Warp Grinders paid for themselves and did well. Clan Red Spears did okay, and Skaven Slingers did fine. The side of Blood Penguin, 1,300 on Throg did well. Shaman Sorcerer Fire, 1,700 did nicely. Soul Crusher, 1,400, but he's very expensive. I don't love that part of this build, but alright, you can do what you want to do. 2,000 on the Cold Voider is very nice. Armored Skinwolves, mixed value, since they both cost 1,100, but they did okay-ish. Marauders did fine. Berserkers were an important piece. And Beast of Thasher did okay. So, GG's.
Roar. Subscribe, yes, yes.